everyone, it's Sid from Cool Moviegram. Hope you're well, hope you're safe. Today, it's my video, which is for 10 of my favorite horror films that I just love. Just considering it's almost Halloween. So I thought, yeah, it would be appropriate because I saw the old AF reviewers doing their pick of their top 10, but this itself is just a list of 10 horror movies which I just enjoy. I couldn't really put them all in like ranking which one's best because a lot of horror films, they're not the same. They're of different type of horror movies and horror subgenres. Like you have some that are like a supernatural thrillers, some that are like kind of like a zombie movies or vampire movies or science fiction horror movies, etc., etc. So there's so many different subgenres and different types of horror movies. So I thought, why not do 10 horror movies that for me, I would say are my personal favorites. Well, the first one is Fright Night from 1985, directed by Tom Holland. Not the young British actor who's playing Spider-Man or in the new Uncharted films. He's an actual horror filmmaker who also directed the original Child's Play, which came out in 88 or 89, I think it was. Yep, the movie itself stars Chris Sarandon as a charismatic vampire called Jerry Dandridge. Now, his neighbor, Charlie Brewster, is a curious teenager who's obsessed with horror movies and begins to get suspicion that Mr. Dandridge might be a vampire. So he goes to Peter Vincent, vampire killer, to get help and slay the vampire, whilst also trying to save his girlfriend. This film, when it came out, it was like I was only probably about a year old, but I remember watching it on TV late at night, and I thought, wow, this is such a cool movie. The vampire was just so fucking cool. I thought he was like the coolest of the vampires. He could be ruthless, but at the same time, he was charismatic. He could be, charming. He was good with the ladies. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy is just awesome. Chris Sarandon did he created one of the most iconic movie vampires ever. Of course, Kiefer Sutherland's performance in The Lost Boys, which was also fantastic as well. But for me, I would say when it comes to my all-time favorite vampire horror movies, like from the 80s especially, I would say Fright Night kind of tops all of them. That's my top vampire movie. Up next is the 1990 film Misery, which stars Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes, and who's obsessed with a author played by James Caan, who ends up in her care after his car breaks down, gets in an accident or such, and then she just shows her obsession. Now, this was a great psychological horror movie. It just shows the depth that some people take their fandom to. Kathy Bates is absolutely terrifying in this film. She's just so, evil, but yet she has this kind of childlike wonder about her, especially when it comes to how she's obsessed with the character Misery, who's like the lead protagonist in the novels that the author's actually writing. Now, I thought this film, the tension, the suspense and the tension was great. Very much similar to The Shining, but of course, being that it was also adapted from a Stephen King novel, it kind of had that eerie feel to it, that nothing seems to be all right. I'm actually looking at a computer screen as we speak. I've actually got the names listed, so I just didn't want to mess them up. But definitely, that's another, I would say, a brilliant, intense, like psychological horror thriller type of movie. And the next one I have on the list is Alien, one of my all-time favorite movies of all time. Not just a horror movie, but one of my all-time favorite films, directed by Ridley Scott in 1979. What is there to say about this film? It's kind of like it's a groundbreaking genre masterpiece when it comes to science fiction and horror. It's just absolutely perfect. Ridley Scott kind of captures the kind of the loneliness and the emptiness of space where these people are on a ship, and how they are literally just isolated on the ship on the ship with a much superior killing organism which kind of hunts these people down one by one. But it's not even just the kills as such that are gruesome as such or anything. It's just the tension and the suspense that kind of like is there, knowing that there's something out there that's going to kill us, and how to kind of survive from it. And that's where I think Sigourney Weaver kind of takes charge, and I would say definitely one of the best movie characters of all time. I mean, I love the sequel Aliens, but of course that was more, I would class that more as an action film, whereas Alien is more of a science fiction horror movie. And of course, another Stephen King movie on the list, which is The Shining. Of course, directed by the master Stanley Kubrick, starring Jack Nicholson. Of course, the Torrance family head to the Overlook Hotel, get snowed in, and then cabin fever gets to him. But then there's also ghosts in the hotel that end up kind of adding to Jack's kind of loneliness and his insanity. And I just think the use of the music and the just the kind of the cinematography itself, and it kind of builds again a lot of suspense and fear in the movies. It is just genuinely a creepy film, and although it was kind of deviates a hell of a lot from the actual the actual novel itself, but they managed to do a good job of this film, even though Stephen King hates this movie. But I thought, but there again, when you got like a book, you can't put the exact novel word for word, page for page onto an actual movie. There has to be some changes. I mean, biggest example being The Godfather by Mario Puzo. Of course, they had to miss out some arcs and a few chapters, and a few changes had to be made just for the purpose of narrative. I mean, film and novels are like two, and literature, film and literature are two completely different forms of narrative. There has to be changes between them. But then, of course, Stephen King makes a lot of descriptive kind of like has a lot of passages where there's a lot of description involved, and you get into the mindset of the character, what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and why they're acting a certain way. And the next one is, of course, I would say The Thing. This is one of the films that kind of petrified me as a kid. This is, of course, the 1982 version of The Thing, not the old black and white one from the 50s, but this is the 1982 version directed by John Carpenter. Arguably, possibly one of the best genre filmmakers of all time. I mean, the guy has done everything from action to fantasy, science fiction, horror. I mean, this guy, he's able to kind of like capture these kind of genres and do a great job at them. And his movies are just absolutely amazing, especially from like from the 70s when he started up until around about the 90s. I would say his films were just absolutely amazing. This one, again, it was just the suspense was on another level, because the alien life form takes, it kind of takes form of other living things. And the one scene that kind of freaked me out as a kid, I love the movie, don't get me wrong, I think the film is absolutely incredible, but the one scene that actually got me petrified as a kid, or freaked the crap out of me, was the scene with the husky. Yep, that bit when it just ripped. Oh, that just is still, when I watch it now, I find it really uncomfortable. I'm like, why the husky though? Why couldn't they just leave those poor dogs alone? Why did they have to kind of like, the thing had to kind of take its form? And again, it's just up until the end, the screenplay for that film was so good as well, because it just kind of gets you hooked onto the characters and the situation, and you just kind of get drawn into this kind of isolated world. As it kind of reminds me a lot of where I could see a lot of influence that Tarantino's Hateful Eight must have got from The Thing, where it just kind of like takes place in one location, but everything just goes to shit. It's just absolutely like, this is a great movie. Again, one of my all-time favorites, The Thing. It's just possibly one of like John Carpenter's like best movies ever. Next, quite possibly one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. As much as I love the whole trilogy of the Evil Dead movies, I loved the Evil Dead, and then also the third one, which was Army of Darkness. I thought one of the best horror comedies of all time. But for me, Evil Dead 2, it took the kind of the gruesomeness of the original, and the kind of like there was not as much kind of like fear and kind of like freaky, scary ass shit, but there was a lot of it was just kind of replaced a lot with comedies, horror comedy. There's a lot of blood, and just some of the scenes were just hilarious. The Deadites are just looking hell of a lot more impressive in the second one, and the visual effects, considering this was a small budget film made back in the 80s, it had a bigger budget than the original, but it just makes you think. That's the thing with Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2, considering both of these films were made on such a tiny budget. When you look at like how they were made at the time, you're thinking, wow, even by today's standards, these visual effects just look remarkable. And just one hell of an enjoyable movie. I mean, I've watched this movie like so many times. I mean, as a kid on VHS, and then carrying on to DVD. I haven't bought the Blu-ray yet, but that is definitely on my list of to buy. But definitely one of my all-time favorite movies when it comes to horror. And the next one is A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, by Wes Craven. Now, of course, the film which more or less started off the New Line Cinema studio before it was bought out by Warner Brothers. This was like a low-budget horror movie, which, of course, Robert Englund as the garden claw-wearing boogeyman who attacks teenagers and kills them in their dreams. Yep, I remember seeing this film as I think I was only about 6 or 7 years old. I think my brother had actually lent it from my cousin, and yeah, it was nighttime and we all decided to watch this movie, and I thought it was probably Freddy. It was one of the most scariest things ever. He was just so freaky. I mean, as much as I love the first one, but I also have a really soft spot for the third installment, Dream Warriors, which was written by Wes Craven, but not directed by him. But them two, of course, were the best of the whole series. I like New Nightmare as well, but the others were just not too bad. But then, but definitely the first one for me, great movie, great performances, and again, just a fun horror movie to watch. It's just so entertaining, and again, the visual effects, considering this was made in 1984, were absolutely remarkable for a small budget movie. The next one is probably the most recent film on my list, which is Train to Busan, which is a Korean movie, of course, which is about a single father who's dropping off his young daughter to his mother, to his ex, and they're on a train, but a zombie virus has broken out, and someone gets infected, and then literally it's just to survive. But then you see the whole dynamic of the passengers and how they kind of deal with the whole situation, and also the kind of effect that the father and the daughter relationship is going through. It's you get hooked onto these characters, and you kind of feel sorry for them, and at the same time you kind of see them in a different light. It kind of again throws the kind of shades on humanity and what we are like as humans. Are we willing to save ourselves at the expense of someone else's life? But again, the zombies were great. These are like 28 Days Later type of zombies who are like absolutely like batshit crazy zombies that rage filled with a lot of a lot of stamina. So they're not the kind of slow kind of zombies that you see in like Dawn of the Dead movies or such. But yeah, again, these zombie there's possibly one of the best zombie films of recent years, especially since 28 Days Later. But of course, for a more comedic value, I would say Shaun of the Dead, definitely. Not just one of the best horror comedies, but by one of the best comedies ever. It's just such a funny film. But anyways, the next movie, the ninth movie on my list is The Exorcist by William Friedkin, based on William Peter Blatty's classic bestseller. What is there to say? I mean, this is the one film that even when I watched as an adult, it just kind of, I find it scary as fuck. I find it absolutely petrifying. I just kind of like the whole thing that this whole entity just comes out and, it just kind of possesses this young girl. It's able to kind of switch bodies. And of course, you got that whole walking down the staircase, backwards, with the hands, and which probably caused a lot of injuries at the time by many kids trying to imitate it. Linda Blair is absolutely amazing in that film, of course, as a young child actress. I mean, shame what they did with The Exorcist too. That was an absolute terrible, that was just a bad mistake. Something that never happened. I mean, it's one of the horror sequels that was panned at the time, but even when you re-watch the film again, it's absolutely terrible. I mean, compared to the masterpiece that the first one was, just such a great character-driven, great, well acted, well kind of shot, and even visually, the film is just eerie. It's got such an eerie feel to it. And last but not least, the final film on my list is John Carpenter's 1978 classic Halloween. This was his breakthrough. Of course, his first movie, first feature-length film was Escape from Precinct 13, which was possibly one of the best small-budget indie kind of action films that came out at the time. Truly an amazing film. But then Halloween just showed how effective John Carpenter is at more or less taking genre films, and when it comes to horror, he's done absolutely amazing. I think Halloween, again, is the original with, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. Is an absolute, I would say, a masterpiece of horror. I mean, this is what more or less kind of started off the slasher genre, and I would say definitely possibly the best slasher film of all time. I mean, it doesn't really focus on the kills or the gore and the blood and guts. It's just the eeriness of someone watching you, the genuinely kind of the kind of suspense you have when you hear John Carpenter's score. Yes, he scored the film himself, and it's just the whole kind of just that whole look of Michael Myers in a William Shatner mask. It's just absolutely, it's just such a effective horror movie. And the kills ain't even that bloody. They were more bloody in Halloween 2 and of course 4, 5, 6, and how many ever they've actually made it up until Oblivion. So yeah, honorable mentions, of course. I would say The Crow, but I don't really class that as a horror movie, but it's a film that I tend to watch every Halloween. Rest in peace, Brandon Lee. And yeah, and of course, I think Stephen King's It is probably the chapter 1 was for me the one of the best recent horror movies that have come out. Again, me being like a huge Stephen King nerd. I mean, I've read quite a lot of his novels, and I just, I just watch them for the sake of it, even if some of them are really bad. I mean, most of the King adaptations are really bad, but It was actually one of the good movies. But yeah, so this is my list. So Fright Night, Misery, Alien, The Shining, The Thing, Evil Dead 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Train to Busan, The Exorcist, and Halloween. Well, that was my 10 horror movies. 10 favorite horror movies that have just come up after a kind of deliberating everything. Now, yep, thanks for watching. Please follow me on Instagram. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Please like and comment. What are your favorite horror movies? Is there something that I missed out? Maybe I did. Maybe there's movies that I do like. But let me know. And hopefully I'll be catching you on the next one. Of those of you, okay, not Halloween related, but let you guys know. Subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing a giveaway of the 88 Films upcoming deluxe edition of Jackie Chan's Armor of God. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care. Peace out. Happy Halloween for those of you celebrating.